Piotr Szumlewicz, chyba będę po polsku jednak mówić, znany Państwu zarówno jako autor książek ateistycznych, w tym...
Bezbożnik przeciwko władzy religii.
Tak jest, Bezbożnik przeciwko władzy religii, a także Ojciec Nieświęty, licznych artykułów, dziennikarz, licznych pism, również telewizyjny, radiowy i działacz związkowy. Piotr, oddaję Ci głos.
Witam Was bardzo serdecznie. Przy okazji chciałem bardzo Ninie podziękować za organizację całej tej imprezy i Markowi Łukasiewiczowi też bardzo Wam serdecznie gratuluję. Brawo. Ja będę realizował scenariusz, który mi nakreśliła Nina, który moim zdaniem jest dobry. To znaczy chciałbym, żebyście nakreślili sytuację w waszych krajach i to, kim jesteście, więc oddam wam za chwilę głos i wy się przedstawicie i powiecie o swoim usytuowaniu, swoich organizacjach, jak wygląda sytuacja w waszym kraju. Wiem, że Urtė ma tutaj prezentację, więc tutaj będę prosił o pomoc techniczną. Natomiast pozwólcie, że powiem dwa słowa od siebie, jak wygląda sytuacja w Polsce. Większość z was pewnie to wie i widzi, natomiast jest pewien problem, dlatego że dzisiaj jest coś, co się nazywa Prima Aprilis. Nie wiem, czy nasi goście z zagranicy wszyscy wiedzą. Prima Aprilis to jest taki dzień, w którym wszyscy sobie żartują. I mówią różne dziwne rzeczy niezgodne z rzeczywistością, wykpiwają polityków, autorytety, różne organizacje. Niestety to, co ja będę mówić, to powinien być Prima Aprilis, a to nie jest Prima Aprilis. Na przykład część z was, która będzie wracała jutro pociągami Pendolino, jak się rozsiądziecie w tym Pendolino, to dostaniecie kremówki papieskie i ciepły głos będzie mówił konduktora o różnych wielkich sukcesach Jana Pawła II. Będą też fragmenty jego encyklik. Będzie miękki głos usypiający was i będziecie jeść te papieskie kremówki. Będzie historia kremówek też kreślona przez konduktorów. Więc to zostało dzisiaj ogłoszone, ale to nie jest Prima Aprilis. Drugi również taki fakt, który tutaj poznałem jadąc na tą dzisiejszą imprezę. Otóż wyobraźcie sobie, że największa centrala związkowa w Polsce, jestem liderem związkowym, ale moja centrala jest mniejsza związkowa alternatywa, ale największa centrala związkowa, NSZ Solidarność, postanowiła na masową skalę wziąć udział w tak zwanych marszach papieskich i z tego tytułu zamierza wydać kilkaset tysięcy złotych z funduszu strajkowego. Z funduszu strajkowego Solidarność będzie demonstrować w obronie Jana Pawła II. Trzecia sprawa, wczoraj byłem w Lublinie, byłem na dworcu Warszawa Wschodnia. Na dworcu Warszawa Wschodnia jest wielka wystawa na cześć Jana Pawła II, gdzie czytamy, że już Jan Paweł II od dziecka był wielkim człowiekiem, później po kolei różne etapy jego życia i generalnie rzecz biorąc również z dworców się dowiadujemy, że Jan Paweł II jest wielkim Polakiem. Jutro też, o czym obecni tu Polacy i Polki dobrze wiedzą, będziemy mieli w całym kraju tak zwane marsze papieskie. Jesteśmy chyba jedynym krajem na świecie, w którym no już wiele lat po śmierci papieża będzie demonstracja na rzecz ukrywania skandali pedofilskich w Kościele. Ludzie na masową skalę będą się zbierać i demonstrować, żeby nie prowadzić badań nad Janem Pawłem II, żeby zamknąć jakiekolwiek studia na ten temat, żeby nie było dziennikarstwa śledczego na ten temat. W tych demonstracjach będą brali udział przedstawiciele władz centralnych, prawdopodobnie premier, prawdopodobnie prezydent, większość ministrów, mniej więcej połowa polskich posłów i senatorów. Więc to jest taka nasza specyfika i to nie jest, jak mówię, niestety Prima Aprilis. Przeczytałem też dosyć przerażające badania, bo chciałem powiedzieć, jak to w Polsce wygląda. Niestety to nie jest tylko tak, że my mamy złą, autorytarną, taką ostrokościelną władzę, ale mamy też niestety takie społeczeństwo, jakie mamy, mianowicie 49% Polaków i Polek zadeklarowało, że nie należy krytycznie przyglądać się pontyfikatowi Jana Pawła II, tylko należy skupiać się na kultywowaniu autorytetu i dać sobie spokój z krytycznymi badaniami. 49%, przeciwnego zdania jest 42%, reszta się wstrzymuje, czyli przeważająca liczba Polaków i Polek jest za tym, żeby zamknąć usta niewygodnym dziennikarzom, żeby zająć się kultywowaniem autorytetu, nawet jeżeli ten autorytet na masową skalę ukrywał księży pedofilów. zgodnie z obowiązującą narracją w Polsce nie jest też tak, że Jan Paweł II nie ukrywał księży pedofilów, tylko chodzi o to, żeby się tym nie zajmować i o tym nie mówić. Tylko nie mów nikomu, to jest takie hasło, które mogły być na sztandarach tych wszystkich rządowych demonstracji. Dwa zdania jeszcze, bo zaraz już wam oddam głos, na temat tego, co się dzieje i kim ja jestem. Ja jestem, jak mówiłem, liderem związkowym, jestem autorem kilku książek o polskim kościele. Jestem liderem takiego dziwnego związku jak na Polskę, który jest krytyczny, który jest za tym, żeby było życie w Polsce transparentne, żeby wszystkie organizacje życia społecznego, związków zawodowych po kościoły były transparentne i jawne, więc nawet w Polsce związki zawodowe mogą jednak takie być, to jest jakimś elementem optymistycznym. I to jest też moja droga docierania do ludzi, tak? Jakby ja publicznie, można powiedzieć, nie walczę z Kościołem, tylko mówię o tym, że warto byłoby, żeby Kościół był traktowany tak samo jak każda organizacja pozarządowa, każda. Organizacja działkowców, związek zawodowy, organizacja pracodawców, każda po prostu, żeby nie było żadnych przywilejów podatkowych, a jest ich mnóstwo. Tu mówię do naszych gości z zagranicy, pewnie o tym tutaj też było już mówione, że Kościół ma potworne ilości przywilejów. Również jest wpisana w ustawę o Krajowej Radiofonii i Telewizji zasada, zgodnie z którą media publiczne mają promować wartości chrześcijańskie. To jest w ustawie. To nie chodzi tylko o to, że taką mamy telewizję publiczną, tylko to jest w ustawie. I jeszcze jedna rzecz taka smutna bardzo, która pokazuje część naszej rzeczywistości. W polskim Sejmie, i to niestety nie jest prima aprilis, jest procedowana propozycja, którą złożył pan minister Ziobro, nasz minister sprawiedliwości, więc może na koniec tego swojego wystąpienia zacytuję. Zgodnie z projektowaną nowelizacją ma brzmieć ustawa. Kto publicznie lży Kościół lub inny związek wyznaniowy o uregulowanej sytuacji prawnej lub wyszydza jego zasady doktrynalne lub obrzędy, podlega grzywnie, karze ograniczenia wolności albo pozbawienia wolności do lat 2, czyli kara więzienia za krytykę dogmatów religijnych. Tej samej karze podlega ten, kto publicznie znieważa przedmiot czci religijnej lub miejsce przeznaczone do publicznego wykonywania obrzędów religijnych. To drugie już jest. Tego pierwszego jeszcze nie ma. Więc zgodnie z tym, co władza chce nam wprowadzić, za powiedzenie na przykład, że dogmaty religijne są kretyńskie, będzie grozić kara więzienia do lat 2. Kara pozbawienia wolności to jest kara więzienia. No, więc to mamy taki dziwny kontekst. Z drugiej strony, można powiedzieć, dziwne i interesujące. Polskie społeczeństwo należy według różnych badań do najszybciej laicyzujących się na świecie nawet, a młodzi ludzie najszybciej. Mimo to jednak wygrywa partia, która chce nam wprowadzić właściwie piekło dla osób, które krytykują dogmaty religijne. No więc to tak woli wstępu o tym, że jesteśmy krajem Unii Europejskiej, ale nie jest u nas tak bardzo wesoło, bo władza naprawdę idzie na ostro i niestety duża część społeczeństwa, chociaż to społeczeństwo się laicyzuje, ale duża część społeczeństwa jednak władzę popiera w tych zakusach, żeby nam grozić więzieniem. Moja książka Ojciec Nieświęty wyszła już 10 lat temu i teraz się dowiaduję, że mogę trafić do więzienia za jej wydanie 10 lat temu. Ostatnio był dodruk nawet. Dobra, to chciałem oddać wam głos. Zgodnie z tym, co Nina zaproponowała, chciałem, żebyście się przedstawili pod kątem właśnie waszej działalności świeckiej, waszej działalności ateistycznej. Może żebyście 2 słowa powiedzieli o tym, jak to tam u was sytuacja wygląda. Rozmawiałem tu przed chwilą z koleżanką z Litwy, Urtė Žukauskaitė, mam nadzieję, że prawidłowo wypowiedziałem, żeby pani powiedziała, właśnie przedstawiła swoje poglądy na ten temat. Wiem, że pani ma prezentację, więc tutaj prośba, żeby można było tą prezentację puścić.
I come from neighboring country of Lithuania, Vilnius. And first of all, thank you very much for these wonderful days and especially for giving the perspective of the world where atheists are suffering. Because I live in a European bubble, we live a quite privileged life, even though we have what to discuss about, but our problems is so smaller. I was born in a Christian family. I went to Christian school and I left religion as soon as I started questioning, and it was easy for me. I never get arrested, I never get beaten. I still have a connection with my religious family, and that's fine. Currently, I'm a founder and CEO of this non-profit organization, and I was born but it's not a story about me leaving a religion as one person. I did it to tell a story about how to live in truth to yourself. Not to pretend, not to bow in shame, which we still do have. And I feel super sad when I still have to explain myself that I want to be happy, I want to have a community as an atheist, I reevaluate my values. I have morality, and I believe in so many things like human dignity, like myself, like my kids, and the world around me. And I still have to explain it, but there is a context to it. Historically, Lithuania was occupied from 1940 to 1991 by Soviet Russia. And during that time, the Russians destroyed a huge part of our culture, of our freedom of speech, of active citizenship and trust between people. And atheism was the only allowed worldview at that time. There were science museums and science propaganda. No openly theist could be in an important position, including teachers. Sounds like an atheist dream, but one factor missing is a freedom. And freedom is a key to free thinking. And in our context, Church, Catholic Church, which was oppressed, was fighting for the freedom of Lithuanians. And that's why the first contract we signed as an independent country was with Vatican. And it creates a lot of problems now, but I can understand it perfectly why that was the first contract we signed. So let's go to European context. And a lot of progressive people go to the Human Rights Declaration. And in Human Rights Declaration, there is Article 17, which states about freedom of religion and belief. And I have a problem with that. It's mentioned 6 times in this declaration, word religion, and no one time mentioned the non-belief option. The European Commission is already more progressive, and they have this Article 17, but there is a funny story to it. It was founded in the late 80s by the lobbyists of the church, and they wanted a privilege to go to talk to the commissioners on the basis of just regularity to discuss the moral questions the Europeans decide. And they lobbied this as a law that they must involve church in the discussion, but then the atheists came and said, wait, if you involve church, you should involve non-confessional organizations too. That's how I ended up this autumn in European Commission, pretty randomly, according to this article. So I want to ask you, each of you, to very carefully see where they say religious freedom and reformulate it to religious and non-confessional freedom. It's super important to listen to language and to notice where there is discrimination. Let's get back to Lithuania. 2016, I'm super happy, I'm in love, there is a freedom of speech, freedom of choice, and I'm planning my wedding. And there is 2 options. I can go either to church, I'm baptized, that's a perfect choice, or I can go to the civil office, which is Soviet-built, big building, administrative stuff, you only sign papers. Doesn't correspond to my values, doesn't correspond to what I believe. And what if there is no choice? There is freedom, but there is no choice. Good that I have quite good self-esteem, and I thought there is no choice there is the choice somewhere. I started Googling, and I found that Polish actually have a humanist wedding, and I thought, Polish have humanist wedding? Why don't we do that? That's how in 2016 I got a humanist wedding where my best friend officiated it, and we didn't plan to start an organization out of it, but apparently we did, because we thought that it would be nice to suggest it to other people. And I heard so many stories from the couples which come to me. They said, I didn't imagine that you can do it in another way. To this day, I hear from atheists asking me, can you be buried without a priest? Atheists ask me that. In 2018, we had the first naming ceremony because the LGBT couple wanted to baptize their kid, but they didn't have an option, so we did it in humanist way without any religion. In 2020, we had a first funeral ceremony, And the growth of humanist ceremonies in Lithuania is tremendous. I remind you that we are only 3 million people in Lithuania, and this year we will have more than 400 ceremonies. We have a team of 44 celebrants, and our results, as we are currently second biggest ceremonies provider in Lithuania. We do it with taxes, we do it with paid service, not like church, but we do it because then it gives us opportunities for advocacy. And we have some problems now. I'm still better doer than talker, so no life stances in the public discourse is still represented that much. No life stances in the law and statistics, because we discuss only about religious freedom, not the freedom of all confessions, equals no funding. Unequal advocacy capacity, of course. I'm just like 5 years in activity, and this organization, it has a huge capacity, and their data is protected. They get money, funding, but according to religious law, they can do whatever they want with it. They don't need to give the reports. And we are a secular country, but social services in hopeless situations, and I think that's where atheists should unite. In hopeless situations, we should be supporting one another, are dedicated to religious majority, hospices, addiction consultations, risk pregnancy support chaplains, and etc., etc. So what our suggestion to it is one small step at a time, doing, not talking first. So no money for secular funeral house, would be nice to have one. We can do advocacy for funeral outdoor and do it outdoors. No psychological support for grieving non-believers, creating spaces to meet and talk. No coffins without crosses, let's find our own e-shop. LGBT weddings are not legal, but humanist ones are. So we have one life, we have freedom to live it as we want, but freedom means responsibility. And religious freedom means life stances, responsibility. We have to come back to that. And when I'm invited to the discussion, what should be the religion freedom, I ask them, what is your responsibilities? What responsibilities you take and how you do them? Because they take responsibilities. So let them do it in a democratic and clear way. So thank you. If you have some common projects or are interested to talk, I will wait for your contact.
Ja też oczywiście zachęcam do takiej współpracy międzynarodowej. Może tylko jeszcze krótkie do ciebie pytanie, Urtė. Ilu jest ateistów na Litwie? Może też to będzie pytanie do was wszystkich, jak to u was jest, bo o statystykach tu pewnie trochę było mowy. Oficjalnie mówi się, że w Polsce ateistów praktycznie nie ma, co nie jest prawdą. Są różne manipulacje GUS-u i organów państwowych, ale ile oficjalnie na Litwie jest osób świeckich, ilu jest ateistów, a ilu jest katolików i katoliczek?
Yeah, so sadly, last year we got our census, so we have 10 years for the next one to advocacy for people to put their atheistic beliefs or humanistic beliefs in the census. Currently, 74% of Lithuanians declare themselves as Catholics, 80% declare themselves as believers, only 3% declare themselves as non-believers, and other ones are like questioning, basically. And I think we should fill in the gaps, and we should propose services to people, because they don't go to read horoscopes because they believe in bullshit. They go to read horoscopes because they are in a hopeless situation. And that's how horoscopes got in progress during the Great Depression in America. That was the only reason, the Great Depression.
Okej. To może teraz Tonoy Alam, który się wywodzi z Bangladeszu, więc może pan nakreśli swoją perspektywę. Czym się pan zajmuje, w jakich organizacjach pan działa, jak pan postrzega sytuację ateistów i ateistek i również, no nie jest tylko mowa o ateistach, bo ważna jest ta grupa osób tak zwanych wahających się. To jest taka dziwna grupa, takich ludzi jest bardzo dużo i oni często są również obiektem prześladowań, bo ci wahający się to nie są zdeklarowani wierzący i często władza też takich bardzo nie lubi. Oni są poddani podatni na to, żeby wiązać się z ateistami czy z organizacjami świeckimi.
So you guys already know that I come from Bangladesh, a country that claims to be a democracy, yet heavily Islamized. And what I hear from you guys, Poland feels like home. This homely feeling actually derives from another force, which is far greater. I belong to Kazimierza tribes, the tribes of the persecuted atheists. Also, I work with persecuted atheists. That's my expertise. I'm Atheist Support Network Director at Atheist Alliance International. Speaking of persecuted atheists, I should start with home, I mean Europe and democracies where we persecuted atheists try to find safety. Today you hear from Muhammad Hisham, and I'm sure that you liked that little video clip. And you guys had no doubt in mind that his life was at risk. Guess what? When he sought protection in Germany, he was told that he can go back to Egypt and he would be safe. That happened to me too. As you know, that Bangladeshi atheist bloggers, we are probably one of the most persecuted atheist community in the world. It is because we are stubborn. We fight back. 2013 to 2018, scores of us were killed in the name of Sharia and in most heinous way possible. We were killed from repeated machete hack on the back of our neck. I was not just a Bangladeshi blogger, I was the only Bangladeshi atheist blogger with a regular newspaper column. I bear mark of torture all over my body, stitches. And I'm sure you guys have no doubt that I am an atheist. When I sought protection in Australia, I was told by the immigration authorities that we do not accept you as a genuine atheist. This is not just about Australia or Germany. We have been dealing with such cases in almost all countries. In Canada, last year we dealt with an Iranian activist. His name was Arash Jabardast. I knew this guy for quite a long time, since 2013, 2014. I'm pretty sure about his atheism and his activism. In Netherlands last year as well, Samane Khani. If you guys are interested about Iranian atheist activism, there is an Iranian Facebook atheist community named Iranian Atheists and Agnostics. They have 200,000 followers on Facebook in Iran. And she is one of the main characters behind this page. The entire group was exposed. She had to flee. She was lucky. She came to Netherlands. She was told that we do not accept you as an atheist. In France, Bangladeshi blogger Shobhan Kanti Dhar, you just Google his name, you'll find everything. Again, he was told, we do not accept you as an atheist, and when they do not accept you as an atheist, they do not have to give you protection. When these people come to us, we fight back, and these are the cases we can fix. But not everyone can come to us or know about us. In Australia last year, 2 sisters from Saudi Arabia, they seek protection on atheism ground. They were rejected. And when someone rejected asylum, it is obvious outcome that at one point they would be deported back. two Saudi sisters, they escaped home, and if they're deported back to Saudi Arabia, we all could easily, like if we are reasonable people, we understand that what type of humiliation and intimidation waiting for those two sisters. They committed suicide. From this is, I'm talking about the states. From the international human rights community, we have been working with Yahya Sharif Aminu. I do not know if you guys hear about this Nigerian folk singer. He was sentenced to death for blasphemy because he wrote a song that was deemed blasphemous. After we heard about that, we challenged it in the court. And we were successful. We were successful to reverse the death penalty. Instead, he received 22 years of prison sentence. A legal battle we are still fighting. Every time I speak to his lawyer, I'm horrified. I'm horrified that the lawyer might have some good news. I'm supposed to be happy because there is a very good possibility that we are going to win this case. But I know as long as he's inside the prison, he has some type of security. He's safe. As soon as he gets out of the prison, he is a ticket to heaven for the Islamic or Muslim extremists. A mob will lynch him, they will kill him, and I will not be able to protect him. I have, like normally when something happens to human rights defenders, some writer, or like anyone, any human rights defenders, like a threat on Facebook, some politician says something about them, the entire human rights community is behind that person. They find safety for them. They bring them to Canada or to United States, some European country. I know Defenders has 250 allocation every year for human rights defenders. And that is for people working in other fields of human rights, not for the belief defenders. I did not get a single response from any single human rights organization who protects such people. When we are talking about persecution of these people, like I know that you guys have a vague idea that this is, like they do not have freedom, they might go to jail. If you are an atheist, and if you are going to jail, like for other prisoners, there are some type of protection there. Like almost every country these days are parties to ICCPR and other global treaties. And atheist persecution basically these days happening in countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nigeria, Turkey, Malaysia, and these countries, Egypt, these countries all are parties to ICCPR and all other global treaties. So other prisoners have some type of safety net that once they're inside the prison, they will not be tortured or humiliated. I am yet to hear from one blasphemy cases, one blasphemers, that he was not severely tortured by the prison guards, by the inmates. Most of them would spend a significant amount of time in the condemned cell. And when I say condemned cell, it means a dark room, no ventilation, no sanitation, no light. Each and every blasphemer goes through this. And it also involves children. Last year, we win a case in Nigeria. Umar Farouk, 14-year-old, he was sentenced for blasphemy 10 years with hard labor. Like no country who signed ICCPR would do that. But if you are an atheist, they would do that to you. No protection, human rights protection applies to atheists and blasphemers. And since I'm here today, I have a serious disappointment to international atheist community. A couple of months ago, I was working with a case in Maldives, a blasphemy case, Muhammad Rustam Mustafa. There are a few countries, couple of countries he could get out from. Okay, he spent a year in prison, went through all types of torture. I wrote to 10, 15 people. Would you like to help him? 10, 15 prominent people in our movement. Out of 10, 15 people, only one person wrote me back, Michael Nugent, Atheist Ireland. Other than that, from these 10, 15 people, no one wrote me back. There is a serious lack of interest for atheists at risk, let alone support. And I'm here to ask you guys that you need to stand for us. Without your support, our life is going to be a living hell. And if you guys support the atheists at risk, it would mean a lot to us. And we can, atheist movement is in the developing countries now. And if they can find support, it will, it will strengthen the movement. And I believe this is one of your obligations too. Thank you so much.
Wystąpienie Tonoya Alama uświadomiło mi, że to nie tylko katolicyzm prześladuje, ale islam potrafi nawet bardziej. Ja przywykłem do tego katolicyzmu, bo jestem Polakiem i ostatnio ten kościół nas tu dociska razem z władzą. A i stąd katolicyzm jest oczywistą dla mnie takim punktem odniesienia, jak mówię o represji religijnej, ale oczywiście islam robi to nawet brutalnie i niekiedy bardziej, że tak powiem, profesjonalnie. I niestety światowa opinia publiczna, co słyszeliśmy przed chwilą, jest strasznie bierna. I te mordy na tle religijnym ze względu na ateizm, niekiedy uchodzą płazem. My na przykład jako kraj zacieśniamy współpracę z Arabią Saudyjską ostatnio, nikt w ogóle się tym nie przejmuje jakoś specjalnie. Oddaję głos Fraserowi Sutherlandowi. Perspektywa szkocka, na jakie problemy napotykasz i w jaki sposób działasz, w jaki sposób działają, istnieją, z jakimi problemami mierzą się szkoccy ateiści.
I'll come over here as well, if that's okay with everyone. Thanks very much for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me here today. Good afternoon. My name is Fraser Sutherland, and I'm Chief Executive of Humanist Society Scotland. We are a membership charity that promotes humanism and represents our country's non-religious community, including atheists and agnostics. And as you can guess from the name, obviously we work in Scotland, which is one of the 4 nations which makes up the United Kingdom. Scotland has a devolved parliament which has some powers to make laws, particularly in areas of interest to humanists, such as education, social rights, for example. But also the UK Parliament acts on a UK-wide basis from Westminster on issues like foreign policy, asylum, and asylum policy is something that I'm going to talk about today, knowing that Tonoy was going to speak on something similar. But we do campaign on a wide variety of issues of importance to humanists, such as bodily autonomy. Abortion rights is a live debate in Scotland at the moment around protests outside clinics, something that has been imported from other parts of Europe, but particularly from the United States, from Texas. The 40 Days for Life campaign is very strong from the Catholic community in Scotland, who like to shout abuse at women going for procedures in Scotland, but other people who are also getting sexual health and reproductive rights as well through those clinics. Also, the importance of secularism in government is something that we promote as well. We have an organisation, we have 17,000 members. It's a population country of 5 million, so it's relatively large in terms of a humanist, atheist organisation. And we provide humanist ceremonies, just like we heard from in Lithuania, and we use them as a key alternative to mark life events. In Scotland, we help over 3,000 bereaved families with a humanist funeral each year, and we provide humanist weddings for 3,500 couples. As of 2019, we now have more humanist weddings in Scotland than all of the churches combined together. And it's important to note that we only started doing legal ceremonies. We only got the permission to do legal ceremonies in 2005, whereas they've had hundreds, if not thousands of years. So there's a bit of catching up to do. So that's a wee bit of a background on where I'm from, but I did want to talk on a particular topic because the topic was about where people are being persecuted, and I think it's fair to say broadly in Scottish society there's not persecution of atheists, although there's particular issues around education and our rights in education. But there is one area and one topic that I think is overlooked, although we've just heard a wee bit about it, and that's the treatment of atheists in the UK asylum system. Atheists, agnostics and other non-religious individuals who are seeking asylum in the UK often face a great deal of discrimination and hostility, both from the UK government and from fellow asylum seekers as well. It's important to note that the non-religious individuals are the fastest growing demographic in the UK, and in fact, in the 2018 British Social Attitudes Survey, more than half of the UK population now identifies as non-religious. Scotland as well is an increasingly non-religious society, and over half the population say they're not religious when surveyed. And less than a third now say that they're Christian, and that's a significant demographic shift for the country, as Scotland used to be the most religiously observant part of Great Britain, the island Great Britain has, in the 1950s. Among the youngest age group of citizens, those under 30 as well, people who say they're non-religious is up to 74%. So it's quite a significant demographic change that we've gone through over the last 30 to 40 years. Despite this, atheists and other non-religious individuals are still often viewed with suspicion and mistrust, particularly in the context of the asylum system. It's no secret that the UK has a long and proud history of offering sanctuary to those who are fleeing persecution and conflict. However, over the past few years, our asylum system has come under severe strain, leaving many vulnerable people in a state of limbo and no clear path to safety and security. At the heart of the problem is the government's hostile environment, that's their own phrase, approach, which has made it increasingly difficult for refugees and asylum seekers to access basic services such as healthcare, housing and employment. And this approach has been characterised by a series of punitive policies that place the burden of proof on the applicant rather than the state. And they've made it even more difficult for people to get access to legal rights. One of the most significant examples of this approach is the use of detention centres, which are often overcrowded and inhumane in their treatment, and they've been found to be damaging to the mental health of those who are detained. Many asylum seekers are held for detention centres for months or even years, with no clear idea of where they can be released and with no access to legal representation or support. For those who are atheists, they can also find themselves being housed alongside the same radical religious individuals that they were fleeing from in the first place. Another example of the hostile environment in the UK is the introduction of the Immigration Act of 2014, which makes it a criminal offence to rent accommodation to someone who does not have the right to remain in the UK. And this has made it more difficult for refugees and asylum seekers to find affordable housing, leading to homelessness and destitution. The government has also introduced a range of other measures, such as restrictions on legal aid, cuts to support services, the use of language tests, which has made it more difficult for refugees and asylum seekers to access their legal rights and navigate what is a very complex asylum process. All these policies have made a devastating impact on those who are seeking asylum in the UK. Many people are forced to live in poverty and squalor with no access to basic services or support and with little hope of a better future. And they're also not allowed to seek paid work either, so they can't even find a job to make their own lives better. One of the biggest issues facing atheists in the UK asylum system is the fact that they are required, Tonoy just mentioned this in the past session, to prove that they're genuinely non-religious. And this is obviously very difficult to do, and it can be a very humiliating process, particularly for individuals who have suffered persecution or abuse due to their non-religious beliefs in the past. In many cases, asylum seekers may be asked to explain detailed explanations of their non-religious beliefs and practices. And they may even be asked to demonstrate they are unable to recite religious texts or prayers. In 2018, a Pakistani atheist who renounced his Muslim faith and became a humanist had his application for asylum in the UK rejected after he failed to correctly answer questions about ancient Greek philosophers. The Home Office said that Hamza bin Walid's failure to identify Plato and Aristotle as humanist philosophers indicated that his knowledge was rudimentary at best. Such a detailed knowledge of ancient Greek philosophy is, of course, not a prerequisite for being an atheist. It's important to note that by this point, Hamza had been living in the UK for 7 years. So living in this terrible situation, waiting for a decision for 7 years, and then be told, we don't actually think you're really an atheist. This kind of scrutiny is deeply unfair and unjust, particularly when you consider the fact that the religious asylum seekers are not typically required to provide any kind of genuineness of their beliefs. It sends a message that being non-religious is somehow less valid or less trustworthy than being religious in nature, and perpetrates the idea that atheists are somehow morally deficient to people of religion. The government's approach to asylum is not just inhumane and unjust, but it's also ineffective. Rather than addressing the root cause of migration, such as conflict and poverty, the government policies are simply driving people underground, making it more difficult for them to integrate into society and contribute to our economy by working, and also their culture as well. Furthermore, the UK's approach to asylum is at odds with our international obligations and our moral responsibilities as a nation. We are signatories to the 1951 Refugee Convention, and we do have a duty to protect those who are fleeing persecution and conflict, regardless of their nationality or background. So, what can be done? My conclusion. Firstly, we need to completely overhaul the asylum system with a focus on providing support and assistance to those who are seeking safety. Secondly, we need to end this hostile environment approach and replace it with a more compassionate and effective approach, which means working with refugees and working with the asylum seekers to understand the reasons why they have fled their countries. And finally, we need to address the root causes of migration as well. So that's just to give you a wee bit of an understanding of the issues, building on the other side of the coin when people arrive in a country where they are seeking asylum. But obviously, if some of you are coming to the dinner and you want to talk about some of the other issues that we are campaigning on, I'd love to, because I know there was a question about assisted dying, and we're currently very active in that field in Scotland. So thank you very much.
Bardzo, bardzo dziękuję. Zszokowany jestem swoją drogą, że trzeba udowadniać swój ateizm, mieć jakieś certyfikaty ateizmu, czyli krótko mówiąc, jak ja skończyłem filozofię, to ja mógłbym być uchodźcą, natomiast jak osoba jest po prostu ateistą i nie potrafi wymienić filozofów greckich, to może nie dostać azylu. To straszne swoją drogą. Dobrze, oddaję głos teraz Hugo Estrella, perspektywa argentyńska. Jakie są u was problemy? Czym się pan zajmuje? Przyznam szczerze, że sam trochę wiem na temat sytuacji międzynarodowej ateistów, ale na temat Argentyny moja wiedza jest skromna, więc sam jestem ciekaw, oddaję panu głos.
Thank you very much, people, for the invitation, for having me here today. I try to be as often as possible in these meetings in Warsaw. In my case, I wouldn't say I am leaving religion. My whole life has been a struggle to stay far from religion. And unfortunately, I'm still struggling for that. When I was born in Argentina from a couple of free thinkers, socialists, open-minded people in the middle class, educated, with Jewish background too. So not a good mix to grow in a Catholic, militant, nationalist country as Argentina turned, especially during the 70s and early 80s. So the first thing is that I was not baptized, and my parents were very concerned for me not being baptized by my grandmother when I was visiting her or stuff like that, because they wanted me they wanted to keep my mind unpolluted and for me to decide when I was old enough to make decisions on religion or not. I have to say it was nice. It was good with the other children. I went to secular school, and we had no problems. And the problems were with the elder people, the grown-up people, the parents of my friends, those who, when asked me, well, do you go to church or stuff like that? And I said, no, we are atheists at home. Huh? No. And that was the first insult to my intelligence. I may not have much, but I don't like it to be insulted. And yes, it's the first case that pisses me off, and it still does sometimes, is when they tell you you cannot be an atheist. So I'm treated as an unaware believer, and that is sort of denial of our existence that still puzzles me today. As I grew up, I started to participate in then underground movements for democracy, for human rights. It was a very tough time to grow up and to be an adolescent in the times of the dictatorship of the generals. They were very militant Catholic and very anti-communist in speech. So they thought that promoting religion was like a sort of vaccine against Argentina becoming some sort of communist country. At the same time, they had agreements with the Soviet Union to avoid the sanctions that the United States under Carter had placed on the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union said nothing or did nothing about protecting human rights in Argentina, while President Carter sent the Pan-American Commission on the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights to investigate on the cases of violation of human rights. And that reminds me what you said in the beginning, because it was at the time of the World Cup in 1978, and there were people celebrating in the streets that Argentina had been champion, as it was last year again. But the journalists that were prone to the government told the people, instead of celebrating in this square, go in front of that hotel where the people that sent these ugly Americans sent to invade us and to judge us, go show them what Argentines are. So they moved the crowds, they used the crowds for the purposes of the government. Again, of course, the church said nothing. They blessed the torturers. They, even the Pope, today's Pope. You're not the only ones to have a bad Pope. Yeah. Every country should be entitled to have a lousy Pope. Well, even this gentleman was, then he forgot everything. When he was called to the trial of the military, he forgot everything. He couldn't remember. It was like his knee. When he has to go to Ukraine, his knee is paining him. It's impossible to move. The next day, he's in Kazakhstan. Come on, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. Well, yeah, it's a bastard. Well, we finally, let me skip, there's little time. So let's go to democracy. Once we got democracy, we thought that we were going to have also secularism imposed, or secularism recognized, not imposed. And so the struggle for secularism went a bit down, and we were so happy with our newly recovered democracy, wanted to export it into Chile, Paraguay, all the neighboring countries that were still under the dictators of the time, that were quite terrible. So we kind of thought that everything was in place. Then time passed, I made children, And when my elder child started the kindergarten, I told this a couple of days ago, we found out that they were preaching for teaching him to be a moral person. So I thought, well, this is going to be just a matter of discussion with the principal, and it's going to end up there. No, it didn't. I had to go to court. I had to denounce the Minister of Education. I went in national TV. It grew up to be a real scandal because they were applying still the agreements that they have between the educational system and the church from the times of the dictatorship that had never been taken out. So it was a hard struggle, but we won. I have to say that there was a lot of popular support. This was passing. If nobody said anything, they move ahead and they impose. They try to gain for the people or for their views. And if you don't stop them, they will stay there forever. So we won that. And then I was working at the Senate. I was an advisor of the Education Committee. And there was a strong argument because there was a lack of funding for education. And the president of all the private schools that are private but are publicly funded came to the committee, and he said that they were because they were asked to demonstrate what they were using their money for, the state money for, and he was very pissed off for that. And nobody said nothing. The senators were sitting there and listening at this guy saying that democracy was not democratic, and they were not respecting freedom of religion, of course. They were not respecting the rights of the church, etc., etc. So I stood up and said, look, this is the budget for this year, Mr. Priest, and you take more than 50% of the budget of education for the whole public and private education. Don't you feel obliged to say what you do with this? Why is it possible that in your schools that are publicly funded, a stupid person who happens to be a friend of the priest can be engaged for teaching physics, and Einstein would not be admitted because he is Jewish, and you don't take Jewish professors in Catholic schools? Oh. Again, such a mess. My life became a little bit more complicated. They started threatening us. For instance, in the morning at 7, they called, they hanged. 7:15, they called, they hang. 7:30, they called, they hang. At 10 in the morning, when my children were supposed to were at school, someone called my wife and asked her, how is your son with the name doing? And so that kind of threats, or calling some relatives to say that they had a parcel for me, and they needed my address. Well, stuff like that. I decided I had to leave the country. Fortunately, there was a very nice person, the previous Pope of Atheists, who was Paul Kurtz. He was very supportive of our organization, our secular organization in Argentina. And I was hired as international director of the Center for Inquiry and the UN representative. So it gave me a good chance to keep the struggle from abroad and doing some interesting things to make the church life complicated there. They did not accept me to live in the States, so I moved to Italy, and a good place to escape from Catholicism. And now I'm here in Poland. So, well, basically, I have to say that today, and I'm short, I finish in 3 minutes. Today, we have our rights legally recognized, but still there is so much populism, which is a lousy thing, and you know it. So we have abortion that's been legalized, we have equal marriage that has been legalized, and all these very important laws that we have been struggled for decades or for generations. But at the same time, the government is subsidizing people for having children. So we have even if we have an abortion law, we have a boom of births, of people who are of unwanted children, but they are an economic resource for the family. So the actual situation of Argentina, which was in 1930 the 5th wealthiest country in the world, is that we have more than 50% of the population below the poverty line and 20% of the population with extreme poverty, meaning that they are not able to eat as many times as they need every day. And that's the way populism can twist a good legal situation into a dire, livable, everyday situation for a society. And well, I have to finish here. Here, I thank you very much for giving me the chance to speak with you today. I knew that I had to spend the eternity in hell with all of you, but now I know that I have to spend some years in a Polish jail too, so it's very nice. Thank you very much.
Ja bardzo przepraszam, że tak dyscyplinuję. Mam po prostu jeszcze kilka minut. Jedno tylko zdanie. Przypomniało mi się ostatnio, że ten argentyński papież wkopał trochę tego polskiego, bo na pytanie, czy była pedofilia tuszowana za pontyfikatu Jana Pawła II, Franciszek powiedział, że wtedy wszystko było tuszowane, więc trochę głupio wyszło. Słuchajcie, mamy 5-6 minut w zasadzie, więc może kilka szybkich pytań, tak żeby nasi goście mogli nawet po jednym zdaniu odpowiedzieć, bo tu mam do 17:50 czas. Nie chcę przewalać, więc jak macie kilka krótkich pytań, to proponuję, żebyście się zgłosili. No jest jeszcze okazja, mamy, no powiedzmy, myślę, 10 minut nam wybaczą organizatorzy.
Yeah, the question is very short. It's just that extreme always lead to chaos. Moderation give birth to opportunity. I just wanted to praise Urtė for her work. To Tony, I wanted to say that, yes, we hear you loudly. Sometimes organizations are limited by their bylaws. They can't do too much. But in the case specific of the clergy project, I do remember a former Muslim reached out to us from the UK. We could not do the work for him, but when he applied for asylum, I personally drafted the letter of support. I drafted the letter and we submitted to the Minister of Homeland, and he was able to get support. To all of you, Nina asked a question to Dawkins. That's what I wanted to ask Nina, not to you guys. If chaos lead to moderation, and moderation chaos, extreme is chaos, moderation is opportunity. To what degree do we atheists have to be moderate? Do we have to repeat the example of the priest before? What's our responsibility in that? Okay, the panelists, please do take on the question. The extremists, yes, extremism is what lead to us living religion. What do you think is the responsibility? To what degree? Nina is doing a good job. What is left for us to do? How much do we have to tolerate? Or do we have to not tolerate?
To może jeżeli nie ma więcej pytań, to może oddam głos wam, tak żebyście po minucie się odnieśli do tego pytania i też może odnieść się do swoich wypowiedzi nawzajem jako takie podsumowanie, bo rozumiem, że pytanie trochę brzmiało, co też my możemy zrobić, tak? Znaczy my robimy dużo rzeczy, ale jest to też okazja chyba to spotkanie, żebyśmy jakoś te nasze działania koordynowali. No na mnie to robi rzeczywiście straszne wrażenie, nie tylko to, co się na przykład dzieje w Bangladeszu, ale to, że ten tak zwany otwarty świat robi tak strasznie dużo problemów, żeby pomóc ludziom, którzy naprawdę wymagają no, takiego natychmiastowego wsparcia, tak? Więc nie wiem, może ode mnie najbliżej tutaj oddaję głos.
Previously, Nina Sankari asked Professor Dawkins, do we need a strong atheist community? And I believe, coming from a country where atheism is criminalized, yes, we need to have a strong community, because when we have a strong community of atheists can pressure the government that has influence over the states that are persecuting the belief defenders. It is only possible when we have a strong community, and as I said before, and I believe it, together we can achieve a lot. Thank you.
Dziękuję, Tonoy. To może teraz Hugo?
Yes, I fully agree with what Tonoy says. I think that we have to go through the legal system, up to from the beginning to the international courts. Struggle to have the international agreements on human rights respected in each of our countries, and also be aware of the neighboring countries, because sometimes it's very difficult to work from the inside, and that's very clever in the case of Amnesty International, that you don't work from your own country, but you have the solidarity from other countries. So it's very important to have these international networks in order to have international pressure for our rights to be respected. And at the same time, we have to gain the sympathy and the love of our fellow humans, because I still believe that we can be kind to each other and honest to each other, and it's unacceptable, even for the most strong believer, to see your neighbor being tortured. I still believe in human dignity in that respect, and I would appeal to our fellows who are believers to respect us, because we could be their children, and they have to understand that it's very, very easy. It's not that complicated. Thank you.
Okay. Urtė?
I think we don't need a community just for a community praising science. I think we need community for special purposes, for services, helping humanists at risk or atheists at risk, providing ceremonies, providing social care. That's one. Second one is, I think, as an atheist, we should educate about democracy. How does democracy work? We do not have a better system yet. Create better one also can be an option, but educate first. Assure that your organizations work in democratic means. Assure that they represent the opinion of the people, not of one person speaking. Third one, and I know Mohammed you will like it, change management, because he always repeats this phrase. And what I took from this conference, I don't remember who said that, but slow down the progress and increase understanding, speed up understanding. And speed up understanding of what is happening, why it's happening, and how we change it. So, yeah.
I wreszcie Fraser, ty jesteś tu przedstawicielem pierwszego świata właściwie, jak chodzi o obronę ateistów, no tylko, że ten pierwszy świat nie zawsze wspiera ten trzeci świat, no ale sama Szkocja jest rzeczywiście krajem, w którym sytuacja jest chyba najlepsza tutaj z naszych przedstawicieli, no ale może ty podsumuj jako ten reprezentant pierwszego świata, jak chodzi o prawa ateistów.
Okay, big ask. I suppose the question was, also a bit about what can we do, and I suppose I'm looking inward at other countries in a similar vein to our own. What can we do? And I think, Urtė touched on this about providing services is actually quite a helpful way to increase the knowledge and increase awareness of humanism, atheism, whatever tagline you want to use for it. I think before we really got the knowledge of humanist ceremonies in Scotland, we were kind of viewed as this kind of fringe weirdos. you know, that folk that kind of got together and slagged off God. But once people started to coming together and celebrating key life events, and, you know, we now have 1 million people every year. 1 million people out of 5 million people come to our ceremonies every year. So we've gone from this tiny little fringe group that people thought were a bit weird to a mainstream part of society. Now, what does that mean? That means that we're able to lobby the government in a different way because we marry government ministers now. So that there's a different ask there when you're at the door of people. You're not seen as this fringe group out there that nobody wants to listen to. You're actually part of the mainstream. You're representing society in general. And I think providing services is a good way of doing it. It could be ceremonies. It could be other things. Urtė's mentioned a few different things. Getting involved in the education system might be something as well. But that's definitely given us in Scotland a platform in which, you know, our worldview is better respected, and that we can then advocate for other issues, and that we then got resources to support asylum seekers who are in Scotland, that we are then able to provide with support and legal support, and the issue that I was mentioning before.
Bardzo, bardzo wszystkim dziękuję. Ja ze swojej strony tylko dodam, że w swojej skromnej działalności staram się walczyć z dyskryminacją również ze względu na wyznanie lub jego brak na rynku pracy i również w firmach międzynarodowych, więc bardzo, bardzo dziękuję za ten panel i teraz, rozumiem, podsumowanie naszej konferencji. Oddaję głos. Dziękuję bardzo.